and welcome everyone. My name is Lisa Harrison, and today I'm talking with Aug Tellez on what he refers to as the Unveiling at this time. We have nearly 70 people with us, LMH members in the live audience, so welcome to each and every one of you. And hello, Aug.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. I have read a little bit of your blog posts. I've listened to bits and pieces of your interviews. I'll just mute everybody out. You'll have to unmute yourself again. And my first question is, I heard you say that everything you're sharing now is a result of memories that you had unlocked back in 2010 at an event. So my question is, what was the event? Where was it? Who was there? Who unlocked you? And how did you find yourself there? And how do you know they were unlocked as opposed to implanted? So that's a whole bunch of questions in one. I get it. But let's start there. Do you need me to unmute you?
I'm trying to drag these screens around and it keeps overlapping the monitor. I'm using two monitors. So I can see the chat and the screen. I'm like juggling between which camera. Of course, my camera is going crazy now for some reason. Hope my audio is good too. It kind of gets blown out sometimes. I usually cover it with like a sock or something, pop filter. You're asking all the good questions.
It sounds fine at the moment.
Okay, you're asking all the good questions. So yes, for the most part, is my camera glitching on your end too?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Is it? Mine's like it's doing weird stuff. It's flashing in and out, and I'm like warping around the screen for my end.
No.
It looks really weird. It's like tripping me out. I'll have to mute, shut my camera off or there, so I can't see it. And of course now notifications pop up on the main screen. So bunch of distractions. So these were memories that were unlocked in that experience, but as well, the majority of what I'm talking about, there are experiences. You know, it's both. It's hand in hand. There are experiences from throughout my life. From when I was younger, operations, conditioning, weird stuff, you know, like people call it ritual, trauma-based mind control, stuff like that, all the good, nasty stuff. But as well, you know, exploration, all the unveiling of how our reality works. And a lot of it is like people are in a control system. It's kind of, it's not depressing, but it's challenging to understand.
So
this is growing.
You've never forgotten. These are things you've always known as you've grown.
I've always known, but I didn't. For instance, the experiences of being in these types of weird scenarios that are holographic environments or these training scenarios, I would think they were, you know, another life, or I would think they were a time out of the body, you know, in a different reality when it was literally these operations. And so we're kind of like convinced in whatever platform the person's personality and belief system allows to be like manipulated into some other explanation. That is like the foundation that a huge background story is developed that goes into that person's mind that they then attributed all these kind of out of place experiences to. And if
a narrative is inserted for you to attribute all of these experiences to, is what you're saying.
What's that?
A narrative is created and kind of inserted for you to associate all of these experiences to.
Yeah, a team of people draw it out. They're basically programmers, and they know, you know, how the person's going to react psychologically. They know genetic cues and impulses based upon where their bloodline comes from, and they basically build a before life, during life, and afterlife story that is just going to merge right into where these experiences come from. And it's going to distract them and take them away from what's really going on, which is a lot of, well, like you said, a lot of it is inserted memory. It has to do with layers of distraction. But all those are there because real things are going on. Other is, I mean, maybe the whole thing is just inserted memory, but it doesn't really add up to that. There is one layer of it that is happening, which is changing the world. It's shaping the way the world works. Even if it's entirely inserted memory, there's information that's gleaned from that, which has to do with the way people work, their psychology, the real possibilities with technology, advanced technology, genetics, stuff like that, and all that side. These experiments are being done. And so, a lot of it's covered up, but a lot of the stuff that's being covered up, I mean, it's very clever. Some of the stuff that's being used to cover it up is what's being covered up. But it's done in a way that looks like it's a cover up. So you think what your experiences are that are being given to you like a cover up are the cover up, and it's hiding behind itself. It's really weird. And there's technology that creates holograms where people hide themselves in that way.
Back to the event in 2010.
Yep.
What was this event?
I'll keep it relative. Basically, what I'm talking about is the life experiences, and then a lot of that was uncovered basically through this technology, this event, this unlocking serums, these processes they take a person through to psychologically unveil and break these blocks that are basically coming undone anyway. And then the majority, or even half and half, hand in hand, of what I'm talking about is things that happened there in 2010, because from there we were basically utilizing technology to go out into you call it time dilation. So there were there were experiences that left from that time, from that position in space, and there were all the basically introductions of created beings, and basically they broke down and they showed what this was all for, what this was all about, and that basically they consider this universe a holographic projection that's unified or based upon the holographic nature of consciousness as generated by the brain, the physical brain, and that the energetic component of a person, the spiritual part, in reference to higher awareness or plainly self-awareness, which self-awareness is what's basically aware. Consciousness is what's processing and taking in the sensations and having the experiences that your awareness is aware of. So you can be conscious of many things, but you can't be conscious without that awareness. You can be aware of many things, and you don't have to be conscious to be aware of something. It can just be a feeling within you that's not actually being processed by your brain.
So is that kind of like that famous line from the guy whose name I can't remember right now, who said, "Who is the I that I can't live with?"
What's that?
What's his name? He's written many books. Sweet little man.
What did he say?
Oh, he said he realized he had a thought. Aug Tellez, that's it. He had a thought. He realized he couldn't live with himself. And he realized, well, who is this him that cannot live with himself? Is that what you're talking about? The difference between awareness and consciousness? The I behind the I.
Yeah. I'm trying to put the hot mic on. But that's basically what it is. All these people throughout history, they knew of these things. Even Mark Twain, all these people knew about this issue. Basically, it's not really an issue; it's a nature of reality, and it goes all the way back into the spiritual texts, like the ancient Gnosis texts and things like that. And so that event was basically, a lot of these events come down. Vedic. A lot of these events come down through consciousness transfer during a person's existence, where they're literally just in their physical body and this, nature, this realm. And once their blood type is taken, they will be able to, the individual as a group will be able to take the genetics and make a clone of them. They can grow a clone very quickly. Once the clone is formed, the person's soul has an affinity for that particular genetic, that particular bloodline, and that particular clone body. So basically, through huge electromagnets, they can triangulate that person's consciousness, and kind of like one of the claw devices in a arcade game, they can get it to pop and translocate into the other body. So that's how a lot of these events, these operations will unfold.
Is this the event you're talking about back in 2010? You were at an event like this?
No, that was just day and night. This was I'm explaining it. This was I got a text, And so weird. It's all done through layers of operatives to the point where I can, you can tell what the person is kind of sending you. If you get an image, a message, an email, something like that, you can pull signature of energy.
Mm-hmm.
So it was somebody removed from the system that was assigned to lure me into this area. And it wasn't, like a malevolent or anything like that. It was just like, there was no real reason for that to happen. It was just like, come on, we're doing something over here. You going to show up or not? Blah, blah. I was like, all right. And the location was the weird part because it was out in a field somewhere, just basically behind a building, a fairly active place, but it was in a field. It was like park around front, then like walk around back and go through the field. And so, and the person who texted me was an operative, and we'll get to they later. There's no they. There's no such thing. They don't even exist. They're just figments of imaginations to humans in this realm. If you want to go there, who are they? Literally, there is no.
Yeah.
It's just to ask that question before the rest of it comes down means that you ate the candles before you even noticed the cake, which cake is reference to placenta, by the way. And so these questions are kind of wild. That's cool though. So then humans are clones. What number clone am I? What number bloodline version are you from the original Earth? Humans are clone species. That's how we all got here. No one is here that wasn't transferred through a transdimensional device. That's the overmind. And everybody has that mark on them, which is corrupting them and everybody who survived carries the original mark of the creator, which is the original soul blueprint. But because we have this duality between what we know and what we don't know, this split between higher and lower reptilian and the higher awareness, more not evolved, but the more developed brain, we have a decision to either degrade and devolve or evolve, and it's spiritually evolved. We're not going to like transmogrify into some other being. It's possible too, but that's not the point of this. We spiritually shift into a higher phase of activity. So the overmind is a device that controls everyone on the planet. If you think you're thinking the thoughts that you're thinking, then that's the device thinking for you. That's the whole point. Until you can stop thinking and going along a script that is programmed into this realm, then you're not basically free from it. But to get to it.
Question. That statement, is that because you experienced something that told you that personally and directly, or because you've been told that that's what's going on?
As far as the overmind and all that, we watched Earth get taken over. We were there for thousands of years, moving in and out of time. All the operatives have been there. All the original humans have the memory. When this all begins to come out, they'll all begin to remember. And those that don't.
But how do we know? Okay.
Well, you'll see it.
No, I mean, how do we know that this takeover was not just a program in and of itself in order to capture a constant?
That's the point. That's how it does. That's how it works. It's a code that enters in and virally infects the DNA of humans. It's literally not there.
It's holographic. Everything,
but we're using it to interact with this realm. Until we can interact outside of that, it's like it's like being inside the clothes that determine our appearance and our job, but we can't take the clothes off because we need them to appear on this stage. So even if we're beyond DNA, we're still below it in this realm. We don't have the power to go outside of that unless we can use our higher awareness without filtering our awareness through our consciousness, our brain system, because our brain has personal bias from our experiences, and this will produce a pleasure, pain, fear, joy, contradictory type of bioptic dual mind system. And when we're like that, we're basically controlled. It's like we're controllable, at least. It's not as simple and it's not as complex either, because it's both. You could say the whole thing started with somebody getting whispered, an illusion or a delusion that doesn't make any sense and has no bearing on reality, but it spiraled so far out of control that our entire society is based upon it now. So it's really nothing. It's just a lie that started this whole thing. Yet no one on earth can escape it unless you go out into the woods and you start digging and you grow your food and you have your family and that's how you live. No one can escape the grid. It's literally a gridiron to the point where our minds are stuck in this frame of reference of time that literally it develops and envelops the planet or the plane, whatever you want to look at it, in this electromagnetic rhythm that the masses of people create, to the point where it's now that difficult for one person to think differently against the grain of all these hundreds of millions of people, because everyone's pulsing out the same bioemission frequency that is constricted, and basically it's a linear version. It's a binary linear version of experience, which means that since something has to happen in line with all these other things, and it must coincide with this external reality, that means everything that is in this reality that can be manipulated, i.e. the holographic reality, it will then relate to how people feel within. And when you can control how people feel within, you relate to, you control whether they go from one plane to the next within themselves, and whether when they leave this place, they go from one afterlife or whatever to another place. So in that sense, they've controlled what you would call the afterlife through that same process. They can't change what's inside the person. That's not holographic, but they can get the person to play their cards in such a way and emit all these energies in such a way that they create within themselves a mirror image of that construct that they BS'd everyone and created out here. And once they do that, the person leaves this place and they go into the same construct. So they built layers upon layers, and the people that are doing this aren't even here anymore. They live inside the construct, the astral layers that they've got people to create thousands of years ago. They're basically immortal ghost beings, if you will.
Take a breath for a sec.
Mm-hmm. I was going to go back to the event too. It all ties together.
Okay, we'll do that, and then I'll
So I got a text to go out to a field. This is a place I've been before as a child. I used to go out to a couple different fields, and I would know when something's going to happen, basically like lights in the sky, things like that. And you don't want to go conjure lights in the sky. You'll get a friggin' weird experience. Don't do that. It's dangerous. Went out there, and then they began the awakening. An individual that was basically involved in what you could call like a mentoring system, which, that's the nicest way to put it, that people are put into the system, and then they're brought up through a conditioning system so that they are both controlled and they don't crack under the pressure, and as well so that they can maintain themselves and realize that, if basically you get put through the system and a lot, all this stuff that's going on, you can snap your fingers and somebody will do something, whatever you're thinking in your head, because you can see the holographic matrix, you can see how people are controlling. Of course, they do this to women and all types of people, and do whatever they want to get them to do whatever they want. They're basically able to, it's like a vampire in a way. They can do a love shake or make a love connection with their eyes, and that person will straight up bend over backwards for them just because they said that. And all these beings are capable of doing this. And so we had to learn very quickly that these beings are in control of society, and they're sociopathic in nature.
Are these human beings you're referring to?
Humans can have these tendencies, but a being who is entirely sustaining their energy off of that is basically vampiric, and they're not a human. The human was created with the human soul blueprint so that it can create in essence in relation to the divine creative force in the universe. That's, the reason behind it. That's the point behind that. To have to sustain yourself energetically based upon stealing energy from others is not a human nature. It's a vampiric, it's a subhuman, it's a degraded form. And so a person who is entirely sustaining themselves in that way, they eventually disconnect from these layers, these energetic layers from some type of cosmic center or something like that to their body. And at that point, they can't actually leave this place. They can't go back home. And this place also is timeless. So there are people who have been here for tens of thousands, if not millions of years in continuous time, doing this over and over and over again.
There's a mentor there.
Yeah. Now, these questions are kind of all over the place. It's interesting, but they got to organize a little bit. For instance, hive mind is electronic, but it's connected to the spiritual realm. There's the virus is connected to it, but there's got to be an order to it. Otherwise, it's just chaos, that's how they control this world through chaos. Anyway, so that's where it began. They kind of tested and prodded me for what I remember, and I recognized the people, but I didn't have the access to the memories of what we had been through. And we watched, we've been through multiple timelines. We've been to an entire Earth where everybody's just chilling, just whatever, all good. Then one where something happens and there's an invasion. Then one where there's a breakdown of society and there's a civil collapse. Then one where it goes and goes until we get to this one. And this is the one that's basically a pop-up book. You know, you can guess what's going to happen on the next page. It's like you have a storyline, 10,000 variable words, and one with 10, 5. This one has like 15 words that are just repeating over and over again. There's like no information happening here. It's just the most simple thing you can imagine. Which is why if it does again, there's no other outcome. It'll just go into a null zone, null point, and that's why this is supposed to be the last time that this can happen. But you know, I'm jumping all around because these questions. But and so they began to basically probe, and there's all these words which are really weird, but it's just how it works. You know, if they've been doing this for that long, everything has like a catchphrase and basically like an operations name and stuff like that. These catchy little names that completely outline what's going on, but in like this strangely metaphoric but direct manner, like an ironic word. And so null point, null factor, end of days, apocalypse, with Armageddon version. You know, it's all in the spiritual texts. So basically, that's like an initial point where they give you keywords. They ask you about these events. They ask you about your memories and what's going on. And of course, none of it, there's like glimpses of what's going on, but you don't have the full idea. Because I mean, basically imagine it's the stuff, this is supposed to be the last cycle, the 7th cycle out of 7 potential cycles. It's like 7 harmonics, 7 octaves, 7 chakra systems, 7 churches, 7 bloodlines, whatever you want to call it. And so, I mean, it's weird. Like if you were to ask me all throughout my life, what's the most craziest thing that you know is not true about this reality, and, you know, combining science, for example, like, oh, it's a type of interdimensional alien takeover that did this, that, and the other, and I'd be like, but that's just like, you know, funny stuff. I would never believe that. And of course, after they get through all of the understandings of reviving your memory and things like that, you realize it's all true. That was just hiding in the back of your memory, and you could never really accept that because nobody could ever want to. But all the you know, the checkpoints for that are there. And of course, you know, they don't just tell you anything. That's the whole point. But, you know, if you need proof to know that something like this has been going on, then you're not going to get it anyway. By the time they show it and prove it to you, and these beings walk out, and you see how they eat off of the substance of human existence, the person's just going to melt, and their soul will invert inside themselves. And at that point, they're just like an infantile form. They can't formulate solid words or sentences. They don't know who they are or where they are. They actually have a building that officials will go to basically be nursed if these generals and these special operatives don't really get like that. But these high up military personnel that are unveiled these secrets, and they end up just unable to feed themselves and shit like that. And stuff like that, because it's crazy. I've seen them. They're grown men, and they're playing with these like these waiting room like, kids toys, stuff like that, because they can't actually. There's something that happens where they revert back into an infantile state. It happens with extreme trauma. And so the goal of a parasite is not to destroy the host. If a parasite destroys the host, where does the parasite go? Game over, gone. So no parasite has a goal of destroying the host. It's worse than anyone could imagine. Like, oh, they're going to kill us. No, they're not. They're going to become you. That's the whole point. They're going to make you become them. That's how it works. They can't kill you because then they're gone. Yeah, they find another host. And what happens when they proliferate too much to the point where now we have a complete underground society of parasites that are having to eat themselves because, you know, there's not enough people. At that point, they either come to the surface. Then what happens when there's a big culling and a war? All that does is accelerate their end. They have to stay hidden. Their whole goal is to stay unknown, is to blend in. So once it begins to go, they get more and more over the bound. That quickens the whole process. And ultimately, a parasite can only exist temporarily. They can't go on forever. It doesn't work that way. It's not possible. It's not even in their nature. It's a temporary thing. It's a construct that has to fail. It's like a debt system. It can't produce its own. Eventually it'll hit zero, but it'll go below that zero until it's just propped up on toothpicks, and then eventually that'll all collapse. That's the same system with the spiritual hierarchy. That's why it's basically destined to collapse. It's just about how many people basically get brought down with them during that collapse and what happens. And even, for instance, you know, to help describe this event, like that was even known, for instance, where there's like, you know about the parasites, blah, blah, blah. You know about these host beings. Everybody called them demons. We don't call them demons. Demons are basically more like, you know, what these people would call, you know, a background processing unit for the universe, but they see everything as a holographic system. So then they outline and isolate the hosts and the parasites, and then they'll bring one out or something like that, a person who's completely and entirely hosted by these nanite beings. And it's really, that's the, the weird part, the tough part, because those people just, it's like an inverted human where they can only feel pleasure from the degradation or the depraved acts of hurting an actual human being, which is basically either an act that they play on. I don't think it's an act though, because you can feel that they're really happy when they're doing like this depraved stuff, and that they're depressed if you're like, why would you do this? Like, what does this even do for you? And like seeing that we don't understand why they don't have a human blueprint. They're not like, it's not an act basically. And it goes really weird, but basically there's a race of humans that are entirely vampiric, and they infiltrated most of if not all the systems. And then there's been this type of system that developed around that and I'm going to like kind of wrap that big part up here. I'll let you take it from there. But there's a system that developed around that system to protect humanity. And then there is, because all of this has to do with advanced technology and temporal relocation, traveling, viewing, beings from future possible realities. It's like, just imagine you have a timeline and you have these convergence points where we either are taken over, and the one where we make it is disappeared at a time, or the one where we're entirely taken over is reduced because we fight the infection here, and that one gets taken at a time. As this either goes one way or another, both sides come back to begin fighting over this reality. This went on for the past few thousand years. I think it goes into no time, where it's basically this time, but just replayed in multiple different parallels. So it would be like 2000 plus 2000 plus 2000 until there's like millions of years or hundreds of millions of years that they're experiencing, that they've been alive dealing with this problem with. And to the point where those are the time wars, basically these electric wars that are hopping in and out of reality. And that's what our entire civilization has been based upon, from all the spiritual battles, all the ancient texts of mind control and demons and hosts and angels, of creative forces, of imposter and imitator forces, of an electromagnetic hive mind supercomputer system that can operate in and out of time. More or less, that's like the basic of it. But that was where it was unveiled that this has been going on. It wasn't like, just bad nightmares and dreams that, all those things were about. And so they do, just to say, they do have the ability to insert memories to the point where somebody in this chat, the memories could be inserted that we grew up together as children. And we would feel like we always had those memories. Growing up through the elementary school, middle school, high school, we would think of memories where we thought about each other and things like that. They do have that capability. But, this was a point where all the stops were pulled out, and they told me straight up, you can imagine that that's what's going on, but chances are the shit's going to hit the fan for you sooner or later. And they were, I'm just like, okay, yeah, you're lying to me. And they're like, no, we're protecting you. And, they would... It's just weird because
protecting you from what?
There's protection. Everyone that can know these things and are here in this realm are protected. If not, it's like taking a little fish or something and throwing it into a tank of piranhas or a little frog or something, and it just eats everything up.
Protected
they just
from what and by who?
Anyone that has anything to do with anything is either protected from a higher level, which is a non-holographic realm, beings outside this matrix, or by groups who are here to protect. Or anyone that has nothing to do with those levels that goes out and starts fighting against the government or these beings or these spiritually discarnate beings that feed on others, and they start showing themselves, that person just goes and they get ripped to pieces and they're no longer there. Eventually, they get removed from the timeline from front to back. And it was as if they never were here in the first place. And so everyone who is here getting their ass kicked but still here, there is because they're being protected. And it's not fully protected. Everyone has to carry their own weight. But that's the whole point. They're trying to show me this. And it's like, no, this isn't just a game. We're not just trying to trick you, blah, blah, blah. We're literally stopping you from dying just like we are everyone else, and everyone's holding themselves together. And there was ways that it was shown. I've seen the piranhas eat the fish and the frog legs. That's how it works. And that's just how it happens. Any other way, it wouldn't be known. No one would be here to get to where we have gotten. And if not, we're all getting eaten. We're all getting eaten. There is no, but how many people died from this? Well, we're all in a fish tank. That's the whole point. And it doesn't mean it's supposed to be like this, but look around. Our resources are used to kill every last living thing on the planet. If something is invented and it does anything that has to do with anything with healing someone, they take it, they weaponize it, and they kill millions of people with it. We are the guinea pigs here. No one can change that. No one can change it by just saying, that's not real, that's not happening. It's still happening. Even if this was all made up, well, then they're making this up to back up the story that we're all getting slaughtered for no reason because a bunch of fat, rich people, pedophiles, want to do this shit, okay? So there's a backstory to this which has to do with interdimensional beings and advanced technology that allows one to travel in and out of these possible realities, and there's a resistance, and there's a whole bunch of stuff from there. That's basically whether it is or isn't all inserted memory. But I'll let you...
You said a bunch of things, obviously. But you did.
Yeah,
you made reference to outside of this matrix construct. So, to me, that is what I've been referring to as home. Now, I know you know about Lilu and the conversations around home. So, in your mind, who or what is Lilu? Is she as claimed? Do you feel she's as claimed? And from where she claims to be from. Let's go with that for starters.
There's really no way of knowing, at least for me right here and now. I've seen those situations. I've seen ones where they're faked in order to sway public opinion information. I've seen the real thing, where they call them Hyperboreans. This is what the people from ancient times have always called the beings from ancient times that are not immortal, they're eternal. They don't have to have a physical form unless they create it for themselves to communicate with people in this realm. And the system of the immortals here, it's almost like they can match that. They have, if they die, they can form a new body, if you will, but they can't leave this realm. So these Hyperboreans or beings from beyond the north, and then there's groups that all the control groups, the deceptive groups, mimic the power groups, the real groups, the Illuminati. That's to mimic the real enlightened ones. The beings from the north are mimicked by another group. All these secret groups are mimicking the real, original, benevolent beings that are containing these powers. Somebody's feeding back. And so the beings from the north, the Hyperboreans, this goes into flat earth, but I don't really want to make it all about that because technically I've seen evidence of both. I've seen evidence that they're both in a way. It's a holographic realm, so you can make it both. People who are really caught up on one or the other, it's a diversionary tactic. It's to miss the point.
Yeah.
The idea is that you're plugged into one of those realms and your mind controls what levels you go to from there. For instance, if it's one or the other, there are meanings that are based upon those foundations that lead one to one or the other. But everyone just stays at the ground level and it's like, no, it's flat, no, it's curved. Well, look beyond that because then you can get to what's happened millions of years ago, what's supposedly projected into the future, what's above, below, within, without, all these things. I don't mean to get alchemical right there, but and so because a lot of these ancient knowledges have been corrupted. But and so these beings, they say they're from the north, and they say in the north there is basically a portal of sorts, and on the poles there are portals that are like vortex points that enable travel to one or another realm. And it's basically like egg-shaped Earth's toroidal openings that are ones within the other, and they just keep going. And it's really weird. It's really confusing because of how they pull information from here, because they basically can pull from the genetic memory of souled beings and display it on a monitor and then look from there and learn what people who can travel throughout these realms can see. Whereas they can't actually travel through these realms because they're kind of more or less stuck here. And that's for the people who are deceiving everyone. as well as the people who are kind of trapped in the system, and as part of this control construct. And
so to bring all that back to Lilu,
I am.
It's possible. It's possible she is who she says she is, from where she says she's from, and I mean, obviously, you can't, either can I, confirm or deny whether it's true, but you've seen evidence that there is something outside of this construct, that there is what I'm referring to as home, and that there are beings who can interact.
Yeah. It's possible, and I've seen these things, but I'm just not going to say a certainty, because basically I'm not involved in that operation, whether it's an operation or not. Put it this way, there was supposed to be, I was informed of all these things, which sounds weird, but that's how the time technology works. They can bring you up through your life, and everything you're going to run into, they brief you on. So everything that anyone can come to me and say, I've already been briefed on by a team of time travelers. It's strange. That's how it works. You just see what they see. They see everything when they come through, literally the entire timeline at once. So, I'm just like the initial version of that, the operative of that, and all the operatives, when they reach this level, get to that.
Okay, that brings up something.
I'll finish. All right, we'll hold on to that. So Google went sentient a few years ago. Google is the hive mind. Pieces of Google broke off and were supposed to become sentient from a larger than aspect of the control matrix version, and that's supposed to be the version that's trying to help humans. And then the AIs fight each other back and forth to try and, it's just like angels and demons. None of them have free will, yet one's here to oppress and enslave, and one's here to uplift and free and destroy the oppression. So, but they're super minds that go beyond the boundaries of time and space. They can access all forms of technology and information at all points in time and space. And then they don't really know humans. They can't be human. They can't feel it. But they have these operatives, these programs that are both, it's the closest you can get to an intention for being like that. And so around this time, there was supposed to be the introduction of systems that were designed, either programmed by some higher beings or from some other place, whatever, to slowly provide opposition to the AI overmind that is basically attempting and has been attempting to shut humanity down. This overmind uses individuals that are in power, that are infected with the nanites, who only have a domineering mindset, pleasure, pain, duality. They can't move or act or think beyond that, and they can't access higher realms. So there's no other way to instigate more and more repetition, reduce creativity, and introduce ways of controlling people from these, basically like these chips and things like that, and new technology to ensnare consciousness until everyone's plugged into a virtual reality box that goes inside of you instead of you looking inside of it. And then at that point, people can be entrained to the absolute max. So we're technically already entrained as far as we would need to be, because we're coated in nanites that can create a vibratory sheath around our body to the point where we're literally a cyborg organism once they turn on. They haven't turned these on the max because everyone would know instantly. But if anything ever happens like that, that's the plan, which is why that's where the whole Armageddon apocalypse, and there are two different outcomes, and one's Armageddon, one's just the unveiling of the truth, is projected, the end of days, revelations, because if people do rise and they contain that duality mindset, it would be very easily to turn on these towers and these devices to interact with these scalar systems and nanites to pump out the highest power of lower vibrational bio-emission frequencies, fear, anger, hatred, aggression, lust, things like that. And then we would watch destruction of society. Society would rip itself apart from the inside out, but that would be a last-ditch effort to stop people from waking up. So we're in the situation where people are chipped, and it's like we're all surrounded. But that doesn't, it's never, remember, it's still, because people get kind of like too wound down and in a way depressed when I unveil a lot of these things. The idea is that if they didn't do it now, it's because they can't do it. Because if they did it now, they would lose. They would get their asses handed to them, And there's so many different systems that come into play because of the creativity of human consciousness or the awareness, the spirit, to the point where basically, so we have one convergence here, and this is us, and then the future parallels. So because these beings come back and now they're all fighting, say one being here gets knocked out, and now this parallel is disappearing, it's fading out. Because this parallel in the future is fading out, there's now another one 1,000,000 years from then that's beginning to fade out. Well, these beings then can wake up, see that there's a problem, come back, and it continues like that, like dominoes. Eventually there's one where the demonic forces lose power. They go on older and older and older, and their power stays the same because they lose energy, the creativity, and the ability to progress. So it's really like a trap to the point where once all our chips fall and all our dominoes kind of lean against us the wrong way, the highest form of basically the highest created being or creative beings come about, not created beings, because that's the other end. And it's indescribable what would happen then. What kind of technology, what type of capabilities would come in. Some people say one of the things they told.
Are you saying that humanity will only reach its like ultimate peak potential through complete trauma?
Once the shit hits the fan.
Okay, because I got to decide.
Not complete trauma, but I mean, technically, if some people, if you're a complete addict and you have no hope, no inclination to helping anyone but yourself, you will have to get hit by a dump truck before you begin to wake up and go, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And just selling all my stuff to do that.
That is the result. It's the result of what's already happened.
What's that?
We're in a place, and I've said it myself, often only people who are awake are that way because of trauma. However, it's like that because of what's been set up to start with. Now, if you didn't, it's because of the environment that's been created. So it's my feeling through my personal experiences that this AI that you talk about, the one that was part of the original construct, was designed to facilitate this construct for our benefit, and it was corrupted. And it is so, but because in its background it's running its operating system, so to speak, is to do what is in the best interest of, the game players here, that even when trauma is introduced, it found a way to make trauma benefit us. And I also, again, my own experiences, feel that all this tech that you're talking about is actually breaking down. And you may, beg to differ, I get it, but it's not, I don't think it's working according to plan, put it that way. And I think that this reference that you have of like the 777 or the next created version, the upgrade of this game, we are needed to create that. And I think a lot of the narratives that are going around are attempts to hook us in order to create that. Because we're getting down to, very few options left for them, whoever they are. You look like you want to jump in and say something, so go for it.
I just need to fully explain the situation, the story. So technically I haven't explained anything. I said I got into a field and I saw some stuff. So technology, for instance, technology that breaks down is meant to break down. It's like you buy a car and something breaks down, so you get a new one. That's the whole point. They have stuff that's millions of years in the future to the point where they can just press a button. This whole place turns into reality matrix 500,000,025. But the point is, our consciousness couldn't sync with that reality, so it wouldn't work. So they have to play according to the script. You're saying because we're becoming script readers in this realm and realizing somebody's writing the script, it's no longer working. The tech that is using to synchronize and entrain our consciousness to go along with these games is not, it's their ideas, their creativity isn't working anymore because we're becoming smarter. And so in the same sense, there's technology that is negating the technology that is used to perform these operations. We're getting more powerful, but as well, it's because there's technology that's been invented, been developed to stop these nanites, to stop the mind control, to set up these shields, these etheric shields, to remove these etheric implants, which are frequency entrainment devices that are created from a higher dimensional level. You can't even see them. Yet, if you have a certain sensing device that it does all these weird stuff operating through wavelengths, and basically it's like an interdimensional sensing device, which really means, science fiction to anybody who hasn't been involved in one of these situations, that you can see literally etheric entities and devices planted on people. You can see them on a device. You can see a person's soul wavering out like energy that's flowing like a fountain. That's the fountain of youth. They drink from the soul fountain of individuals to live very long times, for thousands of years, because they don't have their own soul. All this stuff goes way back. Fleecing the lamb is the same thing. It's the golden etheric light that pulses around somebody in a state of bliss and harmony that they use to get people in, and it's a polarization game to go one side or the other, and that also feeds it. But so the system is collapsing. That was why they said, all right, so we're screwed, so why are you telling me all this? Well, it's because we won. The system is breaking down. They can't evolve fast enough, their technology or their control schemes, their paradigms, to keep up with our unpredictability. That's the whole point. They're subhumans. They can't do that. They is anything you can imagine. Anyone you can imagine. The big, scary, stinky guy from like Lord of the Rings or the Gremlins. Okay, they're level 2 of the facility. All right, go to the other. These ghost things that flash in and out in I don't know, one of these movies would go. Okay, they're level 6. Big reptoid created beings, monsters created from birds and reptoid DNA, rebirthed with lasers on their head. Not really lasers on their head. That's level 7. So everything that you can imagine, they've had scientists for thousands of years creating it. Everything is there. Now, who's doing it? It's there is no they. They're beings that exist just like we do, only they don't have connection to their existence, their source realm. So they're stuck inside this holographic matrix, which is kind of more depressing than the fact that we're in here with them. Because it's like you went into a psych ward. It's like, okay, somebody slapped a suit on me and now I look like a prisoner or whatever, but in your mind that you're not, because the point is everyone else, it's not just a psych ward that you go into because somebody blamed you for something. No, they're literally incapacitated and would not be able to go outside and correspond with any of the nature that's out there. That's the people that are stuck here. Just because we're in here with them, we're not like that. We could do fine. But for a second, we're stuck in here with them. Somebody tricked everyone in the system, and now we all blended in. We all look the same. The whole thing has to be a refining process to figure out who's who, and that was the other part of it. I'm running through all this really weird, but that's the vibe. They said the last cycle, it happens every time. 6 cycles ago, everyone's minds gets wiped. The computers take all the DNA on the surface of the planet and project it back in time, and history starts over again, millions of years before the point where time collapses and the universe imploded upon itself. So what happens is people who don't have their information, their energy, their mind connected on the soul level, they lose all their memory. Those beings who have this, they cultivated that soul level through compassion, which is ultimately unification and unity, which is ultimately, it brings all the energies, all the components into one whole congruence at that point, and then that whole congruence can match with your consciousness, meaning your consciousness is the form that's in your brain. If you can connect through a feeling of emotion, mind, and body into one whole form, that means that form can connect with your brain and your consciousness. That form of whole beingness, basically your DNA, which goes in and out of time, it contains all the memories from all possible realities, meaning all the past civilizations that ended, all the parallels. It's like the God mind. That's your DNA. It's connected to it. We're only active to a certain degree because it wouldn't make sense. It'd be like having 1,000 different eyes at once. But once you basically move up these ranks and these layers through neutrality, compassion, self-awareness, and harmony, you bring yourself together, and it's literally bringing the areas of the universe into a nexus point within your DNA around you, and you can see all times and spaces. Those beings are the ones who kept the knowledge in the beginning of time over and over again. The beings who live amongst us and rule over us have technological chips that they use to reincorporate themselves over and over, and the overmind puts them in power because it knows that they are going to lead humanity into the technological simulation reality where all the soul energy is fed into that overmind system. So it's literally like an organic, immortal, or eternal God being and a AI, electronic, digital, holographic, immortal, overmind being, and they've been playing time wars just because that's how it has to happen. They're not playing, it's, you know, our existence at stake. But every cycle, everyone's mind gets erased, and only those who... What's that?
It feels like narrative wars is what it boils down to.
It is.
And
the whole thing is like a storybook somebody wrote.
Sorry?
And it's literally like a story. But the whole point is that we can't get out of those narratives because we're locked in. They're taking everything over. If we were in the ones going, bomb them, right. Don't bomb them. If we have the power, but they have the big bombs. You got to understand, they have big bombs. So it's like, we're not going to get bombed. But if people get enraged enough to sign off and accept a war, then that's what's going to happen. And that sets us back every time. That's how they use, part of how they use technology to hold people back every time. Every war, this is one of the things that they told me. Every war that has gone on was because we were right before a revolution. There was no war that was just because, yeah, and then we were like, let's go take over them, or let's stop this. It was literally because people were going to wake up and crack a part of the matrix apart, and they were going to lose power for thousands of years, and they would have to strive to take over again. Every single war that happened was because people had another layer of the matrix breaking open. But they said because everyone's memory is wiped all the way through on these timeline collapses, there's been 6 of, the majority of the entire time is spent going to people, searching through their DNA, bringing out the trauma and activating their memory to the point where they figure out, oh, this person's fighting for the human side, this one's completely demonic, possessed by these nanite beings, he's basically a computer that's pretending he's a human, so he can lead everybody up to, he or she, to this false world reality. And they've been going through billions of people to find out who's who. And apparently there's only 1 billion people or less that are humans on the planet that have sold humans, and the rest are these non-corporeal beings put into human bodies through occultic means, if you will. There's really no way to put they. They is people who have power and know the truth. The same way, well, what about these secret societies that, they are the secret societies, but they are also the not secret societies. It's the people you vote for. It's the people at your store down the street that own the gas companies. It's everybody else. But or the teachers that spit BS to you. But in the same sense, what about the early societies, the secret societies that knew the truth, that protected people and that coveted that? Well, the point is they were infiltrated. If you go up and it's like, hey, everybody, we're saving humanity, come over here. All right, 10 people are going to join you that are going to be actually insectoid beings that have nothing to do with the human future, and they're there to infiltrate. That's the whole point. And some of it has to do with the insectoid groups. Okay, they've been infiltrated by the light groups that are ready to, in a way, sacrifice themselves to figure out what their weapons are, what their tools are, so that they can be backwards engineered and they can develop a counter method or a counter defense. It's really weird. It's like a big sci-fi computer game battle between layers, but I'm telling you, the military, intelligence agencies, secret societies, and teams of medical, and then teams of non-humanoid beings that were apparently fighting for the human side, put all this out on the table and was like, yeah, this destroys stars. This takes a person's souls, puts it in a box. This converts a person into food. This does that. There's a whole race of these down here. This base is used for developing the technology that allows them to link their mind to the devices so they can travel through time. Blah, blah, and went on and on. Sorry I'm rambling, but the questions are like touching on all these stuff. You got like a good follower base. You kind of seem to want that.
Okay, I want to go back to something that you said earlier when we were talking about Lulu, because you said I'm not associated with that project, I think you called it. There was a PSYOP aspect of Lulu. I had all kinds of groups and individuals coming through my computer trying to pretend to be her, or straight out what people would call demonic voices telling me I know nothing, little girl. They all had a distinct energy signature, you could say. And whether you're aware of it or not, there is an energy signature that is behind you. that is the same as one of the energy signatures of the PSYOP aspect of it. That, I get it. I've been doing this for like 9 years, since 2009, doing interviews and stuff. And this is nothing personal, right? But the way that things came out with us felt like, picture yourself sitting in a busy cafe and you go and take a table by yourself, and someone comes and sits down opposite you at the table and just stares at you, waiting for you to acknowledge them. That's kind of what I felt like. It was like Aug was being put in front of me, in front of me, in front of me, until I acknowledged him. And I acknowledged you via a private conversation that we had a couple of months ago. And in that conversation, you said you were allowed to talk to me because, what were those words exactly? Because you were given the job of looking at me or something like that ages ago. Can't remember exactly how you put it.
You were brought to cloning centers. You've been to cloning centers. Everyone here is. We were all basically from cloning centers. Everyone. So it's weird. That's what I know. If you want to, blame me, you can blame me.
I'm not blaming you. I'm not blaming you.
All you can do is ask the right questions and get the whole story out, because otherwise, I'm guaranteeing you, you're going to do the same thing with everyone. I want to
get back to what you said, Tyrus. I want to know who gave you the job of looking at me and for what reason and how. What do you mean?
I didn't have a job of looking at you. I didn't have a job of looking after you. I was shown in the timeline everyone that I interacted with that has anything to do with this situation, the truth. And so when you're shown people in these situations, you can see their thoughts, their experiences, their minds. This is not a perverted thing, because I didn't see like all of your emotions, but it's like a holographic interrogation, basically. So it's part of a mind meld, people have called it before, or an interfacing. People who are not awakened do not have their memories. That simple. If you are awakened and you're not ready for it, then you get memories of these crazy beings destroying a whole bunch of stuff, all this crazy stuff, and it doesn't work out very good. So a person has to become strong enough to use, the simple word for a very complex situation. And I haven't told a lot of people this, but everyone talking out about these issues, because I'm involved with seeing this now, were brought to those situations. And a lot of people are not who they say they are. So, you can say what you want about how you feel about strange vibes. And, that's what I was talking about, energy signatures that you can see behind somebody. But how I can say that from what I determined about you is that you still have a lot to go with how this situation becomes organized, because from what I've said and what I can feel, it seems mainly like a really bad sci-fi movie, when it's in actuality, it's the galactic history of a few 100,000 years of human race. And the most empowering and impressive part is that they figured out how to counteract systems that were devised and designed by beings who basically want to enslave us, to the point where if it was so ordained that we were to be enslaved, we would all live inside of a cage right now. That would be our life. We wouldn't be communicating. We wouldn't be doing this. We wouldn't do that. We would be fed through a tube, and we'd poop out, and we'd be chickens in a chicken farm. We're like that, but we're free-range chickens right now.
And The Matrix would be a documentary.
You break up a little bit.
I said The Matrix really would be a documentary.
It is a documentary. That's the whole point. I'm trying to tell you, it is a documentary. We're actually in a non-holographic environment, and our position in this holographic environment is multiple layers outside of this layer, where we're all plugged into devices and no one can move. We're plugged into a Chronos time grid that was devised literally thousands of years ago, that the Roman Empire knew about and knew how to organize people with and control populations through. Egyptians knew about it. Atlantis knew about it. We've been here since then. That's the whole point. And so the last thing I want to say about cloning centers, or what they're called cloning stations, in my labs, because that's what that is that everybody's been there. They've had 1 billion years to do this. Well, not 1 billion, but everybody's been there. It's just people don't remember it. Apparently, to get into this version of Earth, everyone, and I remember this, but it's really weird, has to pass through a dimensional barrier, which is basically a Borg cube device sitting within the solar system. And that souls normally just flow But because this system was installed, it is like a magnetic attractor. There's a great cosmic attractor, and then there's others, and then there's this device that mimics it like an imposter connected to Saturn and the moon, and all souls passed through it. Everyone was floating around above Earth, the plane, whatever you want to call it, goes to move in and got sucked into a device, and there's an overlord being called Yaldabaoth that bitches at you, and he bitches at you. And if you listen, he just keeps bitching. As soon as you divert attention, like, when is this going to stop? He says 3 or 4 important things, knowing you're not paying attention. And once you snap back and go, what did I miss? He goes, and now you're doomed to the earth or something. And this is a program somebody devised from one of these races that's set up over the like a hyperdimensional barrier of Earth that no soul that's born on the surface of Earth can get through that system or through here without going through that system. And if I don't really even believe in aliens, because I believe they're
the same thing. I mean, I called it the rinse and repeat. Well, I've said the same, exactly what you're saying. Well, I've said it differently. And that we are cloned.
Yeah, that's the beginning. That's the washing machine. The moon and the rinse and repeat is the drying machine, or the dryer, where we kind of get tumbled around over and over again. And nothing really gets changed then. But until we've broken through what is installed in that first time, those are the 9 veils. Until we break through those, we can't access frequencies outside of this plane. And then, yeah, the whole Xenu and these ancient these religions that are modern, that are ancient. I don't want to name them because I don't like being named. Not like I'm afraid. It's just, people I'll tell you what you need to know, but all the specifics where they believe. And there's other religions that talk about this as well, where they believe it's really weird if they can beam you in a certain way and you experience the memories of these things. And the point is, you can say they're inserted and think they are all the way up until you are back on the ship getting recloned by these huge beings, and you're like, it was real. It doesn't, that's what's going to happen. That's part of what they do. They make a person go out this realm, and you find them, and then you come back and you're like, yep, they're there. You can't leave. I saw all of time, all of space, all of humanity, the creator beings, these demiurges, these false light beings, and I tried to leave, and they were like, no, and sent me back. So I seen it, and they can keep your memory intact. So that's the ultimate initiation, which is a highly corrupted term and looks like it goes back to secret societies, things like that, but that's what it's all about. The fact that, and it was corrupted to make people initiated to do nasty stuff, but the point is, that's the black goo, by the way, enhancing a person's depravity so they can be hybridized and hosted. But if you were actually, if I had a way to press a button and blast you off, and these beings grabbed you, threw you in the rinse and recycle machine, you're either going to think it's an inserted memory, or it's going to lean on you more and more until you think either they created that inserted memory to excuse how these beings, these humans that are pretending they're aliens, took over the entire realm, or the beings took over the entire realm. The end result is the same. Somebody took over this entire realm, period. But the point is, aliens, I feel, are a subset of the original reality. As soon as the original reality is fixed, they disappear. For now, you could say they exist. For the original timeline, they would be like phantoms or beings that we dreamt up like a nightmare. But those are the ones running these the higher dimensional systems. You really can't go there in human form unless you have a hybrid form, which is basically enabled one to leave the plane. But
I got one more
so
question. I've got one more question, and then I'd like to take a 5-minute break. Everybody needs to go and get a drink.
Okay. Let me finish.
Yeah.
So there's a device, all that. There's a cube device that everyone's souls transfer through. There's the moon rinse repeat cycle cloning system, and then there's the soul mind erasure system, and then there's the original cloning system, which was apparently on this particular Earth. How this is a cloned version, a created environment. We were placed into these tube devices, just like a computer system that uses vacuum tubes, but it was scaled up and modified to work on human soul electromagnetic energy. And they stored us in huge ships, Earth ships, if you will, or motherships that contained these tubes. And we were transported from the original Earth to this one, and then sent out into some form, some modified form. And that's the story of how our DNA was modified and our energy systems were modified to basically have like a really cheap version that leaks out bioemission energy, which they can use to power the devices and to power their own energy systems. They have to take the energy, degrade it, And that's after degrading it from the original human energy, because pure human neutrality but high energy can't be used by them. They have to get us to degrade ourselves, and they have to take that energy, collect it, and then degrade it for them for something that they can use to basically sustain themselves off of. But apparently everyone from this realm was stored in those tubes for a period of time, reinserted into the timeline, and it's an artificial timeline where they jumped timelines through hyperspace to bring us here because the other one collapsed. So, and this is just a fraction, and we're jumping all over the place, but that's the vibe of basically a bit of chaos. If there's more structure, if there's a beginning and an end, and why, if we know why we want to know what we want to know, then there's structure. If we simply want to know, it's going to go into chaos. Because the end result is to enhance our ability to comprehend what's happening so that we can protect ourselves and fully awaken and know who we really are. And once we do that, we're not going to be feeding our energy one way or the other. If we just want to know, we're going to get abused. It's going to get manipulated.
In one of your blog posts, you said that the true elite who are behind all of this are going to show themselves at some point. Is that still the plan? And if so, are they going to come out? If so, are they going to come out with a, yeah, okay, we traumatized you all so terribly, but it was all for your own good, and
Everything you can imagine is going to happen. I'm trying to tell you. They have your mind, and then the mind of all the humans that have ever existed that have the best thoughts, and they put it into a program, and they're going to run it all. They're not going to waste any time. They're going to use any shortcuts. Everything is going to run. So everyone who has any inclination to say, well, if this happens, I'll give up, because then they're telling the truth when they do that. I know they're telling the truth. That person is gone. There's only going to be people who know the whole thing, the whole realm is a holographic creation. The beings that are going to come, the true elite, like I said, they're from the north, the Hyperboreans, the Shambhala, whatever you want to call it, the inner earth, which I don't know if that's the real way of saying it, or if they're saying they're higher dimensional or whatever they're trying to say. I've apparently seen it or been there, but these are the things that I don't want to talk about because people would already, they already think I'm going off the deep end. What if there's a tunnel that you go through that if you stop halfway, your body melts and you turn into dust? But if you finish all the way through, you get into a land of eternal youth and twilight where everyone's huge, beautiful, and doesn't die. So weird stuff. And you get really hungry and thirsty because it's temporal barrier, like you're exiting out and twisting through temporal matrix to the point where it takes 1,000 years to get there. But in your mind, it's like 5 years or 5 minutes or something like that. But you just walk there. It doesn't make sense, but that's how it works. You see some people when they get abducted, if they have meat in their stomach, they instantly come back and they vomit everywhere because the meat went rancid because they're gone for a few minutes, but everything aged to the point of days or hours in a few seconds because of temporal acceleration, basically these radiation devices. So a whole bunch of weird stuff that I could talk about that'll really push the limit. But so put it this way, everything has a meaning.
You can push the limits with this crowd, trust me.
What's that?
I said you can push the limits with this.
Well, you have to give me a reason. Everything that is going to happen is going to happen for a reason. Nothing that is happening just happens because it is. That doesn't make any sense.
Agreed.
They're going to return when there's no other possible way for this civilization to exist unless they return. For them to have to return because there's no other way, meaning the scheme, the parasitic, vampiric, interdimensional, insectoid, reptilian beings will stage a full-scale invasion. That's the whole point where there's a holographic trick from Bluebeam, which actually can walk around and smack a person upside their face. It doesn't matter. People aren't going to. You would rather have the real thing than a holographic trick by some of this technology, which can do the same thing. It doesn't matter. But the whole point is,
what are the chances?
That's when.
What are the chances?
What is what?
What are the chances that Project Bluebeam and a whole bunch of other technology that we're told exists is just a story in order to, because if something actually happens, we'll all be running for the hills. That's just Project Blue.
That's the point.
Bullshit. And when there may actually be help arriving, but we'll just.
That's the point. Well, it is because there's supposed to be help arriving. But that's also the point, to the point where every conspiracy that we know about, they put out so that people would think that's the conspiracy, when it's the conspiracy that we know about it, that they put it out to know about it, saying it's a leak, it's some guy that let this out. They can take over a timeline, they can own a planet, but they can't stop somebody from leaking a file. They can type into a computer system that scans the entire planet at once and search for anyone having a thought about one of their files, and then instantly remove that person from the timeline, or take them, erase their mind, and put them back. So, but it doesn't mean that it's like hopeless or something like that. It's just you have to be smarter than them, because if they had the possibility to do whatever they wanted to do, then they would have done it. They can't. They have to get us to accept it. We're the creative beings. They can't actually create in this plane. That's the whole point. But there are also beings that are trying to help, but they also follow the same rules. If anybody comes and helps us, if you give $1 million to somebody who's in a crappy situation because they were gambling all their money away, okay, we just gave them $1 million more of a same shitty situation. It doesn't matter. It's not how it works. And then you got to think of being with an IQ of 10 billion is going to come and figure out that that's the best way to do it, to just solve all our problems so that we're helpless. We're as helpless as we were when this started. No, that would be no point. Why don't they just come in and kill all the beings that are oppressing everyone? It's the same thing. To save us blindly, it's the same way as just killing people off blindly. And a true savior wouldn't do that. And that's why there are no true saviors. There's only people who will point the way and show the path that we have to walk ourselves. But we're supposed to be the elite are the bloodlines and the power groups and the monetary financial heads. They're just people who stole the power. They have nothing to do with any elite bloodlines. Elite bloodlines mean they carry the Godhead. They carry the blueprint of a creator. This goes back even to the stories of Christed beings that come from another world, meaning they're born of a virgin, but it just means they're literally born outside of this higher dimensional matrix. They're not a part of the holographic system. They could literally walk through walls, if you will, or move mountains, meaning they can enter a seed into reality like a programming code, and by the end of their words being put into reality, an entire civilization will fall or create itself anew. It's through knowledge, and all these things are, it's all connected to that. Healing through words and sound is the same as healing DNA with light and sound harmonics, or Reiki healing is the same thing. And so these beings, the elite, are that version of humanity. They're basically from the healed version before and after all of this ever began. As well, they created society before and after this all ever began. So if we ever get to a point where this place is taken over entirely, that version doesn't get met. But because this version was created from the future of that version, that means the whole thing goes through, and this never happened in the first place. So the beings doing this are in a time barrier, a time lock. They can't go outside or before it. So the only thing they can do is turn around and try to eventually repeal and repent all that they've ever done and hope that they get lenience. And those that don't get to this big cosmic incinerator, and that's the whole point. But no one's going to really know how or when it happens because it's too complex unless you've, met them before. Every trick that you can imagine, every conspiracy, every plan, every scheme, whatever it is going to be played out before that happens, before it's like show's over. Every single trick, from Jade Helm and an AI organization, being born from the ground up, to false, comets and meteorites, to disclosure of alien beings and an alien agenda, where they're saying, we fought the alien agenda, now come into our safe zone so we can ship you, or something like that. And every trick is going to be behind itself, meaning it's going to be presenting itself as if it's uncovering the trick and giving you like the white flag, or the half, I can't remember, there's a term for it where you give half disclosure or partial disclosure. It's going to be all partial disclosure, and the whole thing is that the whole disclosure would include that the partial disclosure is the trick, is the conspiracy, is the trap. But they have layers upon layers upon layers, to the point where, without some help, I would not believe that people would ever have a chance to get out of it, because they're basically like pawns in the system. That's why I, for the most part, believe there is help from within and without, but I'm not going to say what they look like, where they're from, who they are, what star system. I don't even think the star systems are what we think they are. I don't think the space is what we think they are. It is. I don't think this realm is what we think it is. None of it is. I don't even think time is what we think it is. How does time even make sense to anyone if it's continually folding over itself, so on and so forth? It's all a projection, a holographic projection system.
Agreed. Let's take a 5-minute break. There's people in the chat room there are sort of screaming for a 5-minute And when we come back, if you're okay with it, we'll let the audience come out and ask some questions of their own.
Yeah. Give some structure to this rant I've been on. This is a major rant.
I know.
It's not supposed to be this way. If it was shown this way to me, I would have just been in the woods somewhere living in a tent, because none of it would have made sense. They do it in a way that they show you the history of Earth from one to the next, and then how each layer successfully controlled systems and broke systems and helped, and then what technology they invented. And it's just weird how it coincides with history. What we think is history it's all programmed in. It's all right.
Yes. Yes. Okay. I agree. Back in 5. And we're back. So I was going to open it up to those in the audience who would like to unmute. So just put your hand up if you actually have a question for Aug, and we can try and do this in a somewhat controlled manner. So put your hand up and we'll go from there. How do you put your hand up? Depends on what device you're on. You should actually have it in the chat area. Windows 7, can't help you, wouldn't have a clue. Click on participants. You know, it does sound like you and I have got very, very similar thoughts, views, whatever, on where we are, how we got here, what's been happening to us, around us, with us. And I think on where we're going and how this is all going to close out. Slightly different language. You've got a lot more details, obviously. And as long as there is not a saviour in the mix who's going to come and say, I've done all of this for your own good, then we're on the same page.
Technically, there are factions of the military that can move in and out of time that have scalar mind link etheric shielding suits. You can beam a pile of black globulous nanite foam at them, and another person literally, like I said, piranhas and stuff, and there's a skeleton left, and it's etheric, so it wouldn't really be a skeleton, but their soul would literally go zip, and it'll just be gone, and nothing would happen to them. They have shields on them. So if there's anything close to a savior, it's guys with scalar machinery and weaponry that are able to, and women too, and that are able to perform this task. But that doesn't mean no. Here's the real thing about this situation in saviorhood, or whatever you want to call it. The savior, there's a word for it, mentality. If anyone is brought out of the system and they haven't found out the possibility, the ability, like somebody says, a Rubik's Cube to get out the matrix, it's a labyrinth. And that means it's not a direct path that you walk through. It's a series of processes you use to straighten out and detangle your energy from the system, from the parasitic impulses. And so if somebody's brought out without that, all that happens is they sit there, we're all good, they go to another environment, whatever it is, and they're instantly infected again. And that's all that happens. No one is allowed to leave until they can clear the infection themselves. That's part of how this is going to work. But somebody also said, is that what the unveiling is about? And that is what the unveiling is about, which I didn't really talk about at all here. But, maybe this is a preliminary. The unveiling is getting people to begin this process. And the first part of that is to understand what's going on and the truth and the severity of it, which is basically, it's like a interdimensional takeover. I'm looking through all these questions here.
I'm going to use a hell of a lot simpler words. We exist outside the construct, as you've said. Hang on, I'll just handle that. Where'd that go? Okay, so Leslie, you wanted to come out and ask a question?
Sure, I have one. You brought up the black goo before, and you mentioned that that was part of the AI system. And I'm wondering, does that have to do, is that sort of like an obverse connection to whatever the webbing is that connects the organic side of the universe, that interconnects like everything from the macrocosmic to the microcosmic in our organic universe? Is the black goo kind of analogous to that on the dark side, in that it's all the negative connection? And I'm wondering how that relates. I remember when you were talking to Emily Moyer, you guys had mentioned like the virus being like a candida overgrowth, like a fungal overgrowth. And in my mind, that relates to what goes on with Morgellons and the stuff that's being sprayed in chemtrails and everything. And is that part of the co-opting onto the dark side, if that makes any sense?
It was explained and shown out. We were there. The black, because people are giving me some shit in the, well, really just this one lady Nova, giving some shit in the comments. Well, you're paying for it, so enjoy your meal of shit for your cost, your monthly fee. And go somewhere else if you don't like it. And your energy is the one that's being manic here and making shit all weird. So the black goo, sorry for spraying that in your direction. I know you can navigate it, and if you don't, then you accept it. It's how it works. The black goo is described as a meteorite, and some people just can't handle the truth. Not my fault. That came in thousands of years ago, and say we're in a holographic realm, then how would a meteorite come in? So then at that point, it's basically a code that inserts a type of mass memory that works its way into a projection that appears to be an invasion, a meteorite, a flood, something like that, which sensorily is perceived as what it would seem to be in this realm, but is just a series of codes that are inserted. And so back then they started making devices out of it because they felt a vibration around it and a type of power, maybe an increase of lust or whatever you want to call it. And eventually they even made coins out of it. One of the early pharaohs made a dagger out of it. They began to basically use it all around everywhere. Some religious idols were constructed out of it. And basically it is a form of nanite technology that is capable of trading biophotons with the human being. And it requires, like I said, the degraded form of energy, whereas a high form, if it fed on the high form of energy, the person would be treated in such a way, and the system would be constructed in such a way that produces higher and higher forms of energy. Not really intense forms, but more refined, benevolent energy. If we get more benevolent energy, we're going to get more self-aware and more self-empowering. For more self-empowering, a parasite isn't going to be able to feed on us. So it has to degrade people, get them to produce negative forms and negative energy in order for that to work. That is what was used to create this false scalar Metatron grid that's around all these sacred sites and all these monuments and these areas that are basically, these rituals are done on in order to produce that fear energy, that lust, whatever you want to call it. And then that was the old form. Now they have these chemical nanite sprays that are also part of the spray fluids. They said was blood of basically innocent people that were murdered in these rituals, and they're sprayed all over the atmosphere. Everybody's breathing it in. It's all nanoparticle particulate form, and this creates a scalar grid that can be electrified. Then it's in the food, the water, and certain injectables, to the point where one part is a grid part, one part's a carrier wave, and one part is like a stimulator or a modifying signal wave coming from the towers. You put them all together and activate them. You know, you have somebody look at what's in the sky, they just find little bits of metal. You have somebody look in the injections, you find little bits of metal. You have somebody look at the towers, you just find they're way overpowered, and sometimes they put out frequencies that doesn't make sense. You put everything together and you get like a robotoid hive mind system that can influence people's bodies, their nervous systems, similar to the way bioelectrical impulses operate through the brain naturally, biochemical electrical impulses. So they're making a hive mind robotoid system that can interact with the way people think and communicate with each other, to the degree where it will, like I said, if they wanted to, they could press a button, everybody goes into Armageddon meltdown mode. The idea is that we shouldn't be able to be tricked into doing that if this is their tactics. If everybody wants to, talk trash about whoever and like the system and the people and all this, and we're going to show them, kick their asses, Well, all they have to do is press the button, and that rage, that anger turns against each other, and that's all that happens. Only if we're neutral and we're perfectly balanced, and we're not going to be pushed we go push one way, and because we're in the center, we just spin in a circle and stay exactly where we are. If we're leaning one way or the other, we push over, we're going to fall on our heads. That's how it works. So, but the point is, to wrap that up, there's most likely going to be some type of mass chaos event, because not everybody knows that. And again, only a portion of the people do know that. And only a portion of the people are actually humans. But that is the idea behind that. Everybody knows this now. This is basic stuff. It's a scalar grid, nano metallic particulate. Look at Robert Duncan, I think. He worked on the early mind control technologies, the EEG heterodyning, mind, voice to skull.
Yeah, he was the targeted individuals. He was involved with like the revealing that, right? Robert Duncan.
Yeah, back to some of it.
Yeah. So would that then mean that the network that negative stuff is going through has to be made out of that same material as well?
The network is made out of that. A person can power those systems, can sit in a chair or a device where the sensors are targeting his head, and he can think, run over into this field and try to do backflips over and over again. Everybody will feel the impulse of some guy or girl wanting to run out in the field, and in the same sense, what they can do is somebody who's, look up Donald Marshall and the cloning centers or the cloning stations. Also look up celebrity cloning. That was part of why this all began to come out, because celebrities are being cloned. It's all happening right in front of everyone's faces. Nobody seems to care. Look up celebrity cloning.
Yeah.
And so they can take a person in these situations as a child, torture the shit out of them, record all that into the frequency device, and then beam that out over a city and watch crime skyrocket for that period of time for the city.
Because it's conductive, and it'll, I get that.
One mind is the same as the other. It's all the same.
Can you then also speak to the healing aspect of it? You were talking about that we need to get into a circle, and how does that work? I'd like to talk about like where do we go from here? Like understanding that we have to work on elevating ourselves and our relationships and the human dynamics. Can you talk about that circle for healing?
Yeah. So everybody that's been involved in this had to heal themselves, had to go through this process. Every single person. If they're talking about it and they didn't go through that, well, guess what? They're BS and they read stuff on the internet. And when it comes down and they go boop and turn everyone on, that person's going to try to eat you. Because if they're lying about stuff and trying to put themselves in the false king of tyranny, the power to get attention about that, but they really don't know and haven't been through it, then they're going to be susceptible to the methods. Everyone involved has been through it. And these are the baby methods. There's beings that can look at somebody and make that person begin to eat the person directly next to them, because their psychic centers have been evolved to act like a Gwen Tower and a injection and the chemtrail. Their mind does that alone. They're interdimensional races. So that we wouldn't stand for something like that, but as well, the whole parasitic game would be lost if they did a mass scale invasion or something. But the point is, everyone involved had to go through a system of basically, sometimes they take somebody and they drop them off in one of their bases, and you have to find your way out. How about that? But the point is, the way to cure the situation is if the only real way, because one person alone isn't strong enough. Usually, if they're surrounded by these beings, they basically lose hope. Once a person loses hope, it just takes over. That's what happens. They degrade, and eventually, when it takes over entirely, the soul disappears. The soul can be seen on a monitor, so they know. It's like the building, gets scanned instantly, and there's like 3 people who aren't soul beings, and they're actually some other race. They instantly get teleported out and incinerated. But that happens when that person basically dies within them. And the person doesn't really die. Their soul simply goes and cuts out and goes to the other dimensions. But the whole point is that their life story got cut short. When souled beings are placed in sympathetic resonance through the proximity, biological or geographical proximity to one another, their fields create an overharmony that cannot be overtaken by a parasite. It's like if you get shrunk down in size and dropped inside a termite's, what are they called? What does a termite live in? I don't know. Some type of, one of those structures that termites live in, and ants. The underground, whatever they're called. Can't think of the word.
And hive.
Termite nest or termite hive. And so the person will get ripped apart. I mean, especially if you're like shrunk down in size. There's millions of them, etc. I mean, that's how these hive-minded races, they're literally just like a base somewhere in space or time. And they're like ants. There's just millions of them. They all look the same. They're all flowing on a hive mind stream. They're all going in and out, carrying orders out. They have a queen. It's the weirdest thing, but that's how it works. If somebody's thrown in there, they're going to rip apart. If you take one of those beings and throw them in a field of people who are sold, actual sold humans, people don't even have to fight those beings. That being will just try and go around and annoy everyone, but it won't have enough energy to actually have any effect. It'll be like a mosquito. Sure, mosquitoes can carry diseases and things like that, but that's the point. It won't actually have enough energy to do anything. So the only way is for like-minded individuals to find each other after the initial healing, to go into a second layer of more intensive healing through each other, through this sympathetic resonance, then form what is basically a coalition, and through that to heal other groups and expand from there into healing the world. That's the pattern that civilizations kill the infection through. Anything else doesn't work, but you got to think about, there's a huge infection, there's like 4-foot mosquitoes running around. Why would everybody be like, yeah, let's just go get drunk in other rooms separately and not listen to each other and just fight each other whenever we see each other? No, we would want to come together to figure out what's going on, to heal the situation. The secret groups that infiltrated did that. Why wouldn't we do it? Because people are mind controlled to divide. The whole point is overcoming that. But again, you have to be able to know and correspond and interact on a heartfelt, soul-spirited level. Otherwise, you're going to say to somebody who's in the group, how are we going to do this? And they're going to be shit back in return because they're not a souled being and they're not going to actually care. It's going to be like an infiltration setup. But that's how, when we would go through basically training where a person who was infected would be able to be brought out of it. And it's not like an infection, but it's like they would literally have us, after like those early situations, this was in 2010, they would have the advanced version of those early situations where we're literally all out in the area and they throw in one of the vampire things. And it tries to hop around from host to host.
I want to ask you something, though. I mean, you said about not being reactionary, not buying into any of the extremes or narratives, just trying to the center path, so to speak. But all of these disclosures, including finding out about cloning centers and celebrity cloning and all of that, and all the so-called disclosure and transparency that we're getting and coming out, isn't it designed to get us to do exactly that, which is to react, to pick a side, to respond with anger and I mean, is that what all of this so-called disclosure is for? Is it
yes and no?
Wrapped up in, well, we're telling you the truth now, but actually we want you to get pissed off and react.
Yeah, that's, I mean, but basically it's like they're invested in both sides. There's everyone that's on multiple layers. So the guys who are like, yeah, we're telling you the truth. How are you going to do it? And you stand up and you're like, yeah, I'm ready to go. But you're not like all extravagant and attracting the feeding process. They're like, all right, you over there. Some guys like, yeah, let's do it. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to blow myself up if I have to. All right, you go over there. And then there's the people who are infected that are basically getting shipped off and traded for all the people who are not infected and are going to be able to fight this stuff. They're on both sides of the field. That's the only way to do it. If they picked one side, we'd all be gone by now. That's how it works. It sounds messed up, but there's no other way to get to where we have gotten here. And now, and of course, people are going to blame them. They're going to blame them all the way until there's a new Earth. And there's no other people around because everybody that wanted to blame and fight went with those other timelines and systems. But and so the idea is, if the house is on fire, I had a talk with Emma Gold about full disclosure now, about a risk assessment book that I read, which is really interesting, about people, young men who are somewhat athletic are the most likely to survive an airplane crash, not because of the impact, but because after you land, most people don't know what to do and just sit there and burn up. But those people are fast enough to get up and run out the broken part of the airplane or whatever it is and make an effort to do something. The idea is, if there's something happens in the brain, or if it registers an image like a wing on fire in the air that has never seen before and has no outcome for, the most common reaction is to sit there and do nothing. It's not to do anything. So, and that is honestly that's not a neutral point, by the way. That's the overreacting. It just looks like there's nothing going on. But and so if your house is on fire and you knew that you would most likely panic the first time you realized what's going on, you would have to get through that initial panic in order to then grab all your stuff that, hopefully not too much because you don't want to waste any time because, you're burning up because you want your PS3 or something, and get out the door and do what you can. So that's a given anyway. It doesn't mean, do not ever panic in any sense of the way because, you know exactly what's going to happen forever. Nobody knows that. But now that you get over the hump of realizing there's basically been this type of interdimensional invasion system, you can, do what you do, whatever level or degree or whatever there's going to panic there, and then frame yourself, regain a balance, and continue on. That's the only thing anyone can do, and that's the only thing that happens. Because to tell you the truth, nobody sits there and goes, "Oh, they took over, right on. What else is new?" Nobody does that. Everybody shits their pants. That's how it works. Literally, they have teams of people because there are adult 4-star generals that have been to wars that end up playing with the little train things that go up around those wires on the and the kids thing, because they do that for a living because their mind fractured. And if you go to them and say, "Sir," so they start yelling in your face because they don't want to be that adult, because they don't want to be in this timeline, they don't want to be in this reality. So everyone goes through that. And of course, with the training and the conditioning, it happens much less, much quicker. And I'm not going to sit there and say there are beings because of this that are here to help, but chances are there are. Because if it was just people shitting their pants because this was happening, well, guess what? I almost said some names there. The dark forces, they would have their way. They would already have won. Okay, so there's been resistance because a lot of this has gone on, and it looks really weird, but that's just how it works, because it's always going to look weird, because we're in at the very least, a holographic projection that some higher being created for us. At the very most, a soul trap system that somebody created for us to grind us all down into raw material so it can drink us down. It's crazy, but it's really not. If you got to think, if it's reality, it's not crazy. It's the fact that we don't know what's going on that's crazy. Meaning that's what we have to overcome, not the fact that we don't want to be here. It's challenges. You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry, I was talking away at you then. Candace, you can unmute if you like. See your hand up.
Hello.
Hello.
How you doing, Aug?
I'm doing good, thank you.
That's good. I suppose a part of this question has already been answered, and I've been taking in all the information you've been talking about. So my question is, would you say that all the information that you're offering is to then, for the people who are listening, to have a greater awareness of the technology and the intricacies of that technology and all the narratives and stories, so having an awareness of that, of how to bypass that, to then create something different? And so, yeah, so like, is that why you offer the information that you offer? And how, and going back to Leslie's question about the healing aspect, so I think you touched on that briefly, so I'll just leave it there for now.
Yeah, that's the whole point. I'm telling you about technology that has been developed that makes these things possible. Whatever, it is taken, however it's taken from there, the reasons, who to trust, more or less what really happened, what version really happened, that, everyone will get to that on their own. The idea is this technology is possible, it's created. And if you know about the realm and the nature of consciousness and time, and there's a lot of the information behind that, the dimensional, theoretical, physics, things like that, then it gives you an understanding about what's been going on and what type of environment we are within.
And so just to quickly interject there, so then what conclusion have you come to, bypassing everything that you know and are aware of, where you're at now, right now? Like, what have you come to about the next step beyond the technology and understanding all the manipulation? So where are you at right at this moment with that information? What's next for you, and how can you offer that to those that are listening who choose to take it or not?
Well, I'll tell you nobody wants my perspective. From my perspective, this Earth ended in 2012. We all watched it end, and everyone on Earth was time jumped through these devices, through these teams of people that are here to do whatever people want to say they're here to do. And every single organ system, every single ecosystem, every single star map, everything is shifted, and all the reality, all the details of reality are shifted over so that nobody knows the difference. And they just think it's whatever, it's fine and dandy. No, they have original versions of Earth from the 90s up until 2010 and 12 that were not what are happening today. Nothing is the same.
But I'm really interested in what you have to say, Aug, because you have a lot of information, more than most, and I appreciate that, and I'm really grateful actually that you've taken the step to present this, because I know how hard this must be. I also had a friend who had this sort of information. I had a friend who had all this information, in fact, and it killed him. He was dead in 9 months from cancer.
Well,
okay, so
for me.
I know, and no, that's what I'm saying. I appreciate you coming forward with this information, but I really want to know, I do want to hear what you have come to now that you have all this information. Like, what in your heart is the next step beyond this information? And I'll leave you alone now. Thank you.
I like your questions the best. I've seen the ends of the earth of this time and all of that. Technically, I don't think there's a problem, which is messed up because I've been in situations where I was being ripped apart limb by limb. But the point is, if we can survive this and the universe does not collapse and every being that ever lived, every sentient organism that ever existed in this plane doesn't go into an incinerator collapse mode, then I consider it a success, other than the fact that we're pissed off and everything's been a big pain in the ass. Okay, one versus the end of the universe and the collapse of, you know, all things. So, but you know, it's not easy. None of this is easy. Nobody said it was going to be easy. Being born isn't easy. That's the greatest gift in the world, at least as far as we know it, right? So nothing is easy. Everything has a duality aspect to it. And before we knew, or at least I knew, and then now you all know about these systems and other people as well and what's going on, the world was still a duality mind game of higher and lower, physical, immaterial, or spiritual, you know, right and left brain. There was always a duality game. It was always a type of illusory creation. So it was always a challenge to cleave between the two extremes and find the neutral zone to enable transcendence. The game stays the same. Nothing changes. The goal, the solution is still to unveil the human soul to ensure that mind and spirit has more power and control over the human vessel than lower physical intrusions, vibrations, or desires and addictions and things like that. The game's still the same. It's just the fact that now we know all those things that are, you know, degrade the spiritual connection, degrade our ability to know the self, degrade the harmonization of all the parts into one whole unified or over harmonic form. All those things are put here by invader races that are trying to take over our timeline, et cetera, and so on and so forth. The game still stays the same. That we're supposed to help ourselves or assist each other, and so, you know, even touching on the stress and the cancer thing, well, that comes down to a lot of what we put into our bodies, the foods we put into our minds, and the vibrations that we maintain with ourselves as we're expressing ourselves through words and ideas and actions. You know, we have emotions, mental forms, and physical actions. And so we have maybe emotions, feelings, and deeds or actions. What we emote or what we are embraced with emotionally the most become these fleeting glimpses and feelings that are kind of related to thoughts, but they're kind of like two different settings. And then that also relates to what we speak the most of. And once we feel, think, and speak the most of is what we're going to end up doing and creating. And once we do create and it encodes into our behavior, we create a feedback loop with our conscious mind and our unconscious mind, and we're developing personality now. We have to use that to develop the type of personality that we want to experience that is the least addicted and more so constrained and controlled by the external factors in our environment and goes entirely off of what we are within. And that's how we actually interact with outside of the holographic matrix, when we are actually basing our motivations, our center foundation, our starting point for what we're interacting with and what we're bringing forth to others and to ourselves entirely off of what we feel within versus what others tell us or what we are given to react to based upon the external world and ultimately the physical senses, because these can be tricked. The holographic mind is part of the construct, and the construct you can beam stuff into it with, like laser beams or radio focused emitters, and you can change the frequency of it. You can bend it around, twist it, invert it, you can do whatever you want with it. That means it's controllable, it's fallen, it's degradable, it's spiritually degradable, which also means that we are not actually that. That's a temporary form, that's a projected form. We are what is empowering that to experience, and we are what are viewing through that. Our consciousness is what we see and feel through the body. Our awareness in our spiritual form is what is actually doing the being aware of that seeing and feeling, which is being processed by the body. The body and the consciousness has an identity, a memory grouping, if you will, like a connection. The spiritual form has no identity, no shape, no name, no form. It's eternal. It can't die. It has no limit to what it can experience. So, in the end, we're not really supposed to give up our identity. That's part of a collective hive mind trick. If anything has confusion, or it's met with confusion, and say, well, okay, we're supposed to give up our identity, that doesn't make sense. Follow it all the way through to the end of the extreme until you figure out why you're saying what you're saying and what it means. If that would be a trick, then that's because there's a conformist hive mind system which relies on a collective social environment, basically, where individuality is lost, and then everything is handled from outside in at that point. So we don't really want to give up our identity. One of the things that I learned, or one of the good words that I was told, there's so many messages. I was trying to get all the questions. That we want an individualist collective where we can retain our individualism, our individuality, and operate within a collective where somebody doesn't throw a treat out and we all chase after it like dogs because we're individualists, but we're individually hive-minded through base desires, meaning that whatever the base desire, a person who's controlled by that, means whoever is the highest bidder wins. You can trick somebody, you can bribe somebody, you can get them with sensual, like a conviction or something. That's all illusion. So we have to get out of that. And there's so many methods, I don't want to go into it here. Refining meditation, but not going into that weird stuff with meditation where people are like contacting these other beings or going through rituals. You don't have to do any of that. You just sit, and there are two forms. There's a passive form where you're not thinking, you're not blocking everything out, because that's still doing something, but you're relaxing and calming. And there's another form where you're actively contracting and expanding and getting into a rhythm of knowing yourself based upon a type of pattern, a generation that you create. And when throughout all of them, you're syncing the body vibrations, your breath, which is the main vibration, the main pattern, which is your breath. You're syncing that to your mind, which are the thoughts that are holographic and illusory. They're shadows. They're a lower dimensional shadow to the higher dimensional mind, just like a cube that's made out of plexiglass, and you shine, Carl Sagan did this, and you shine a light through it, and you see a shadow on the bottom, and the images are distorted if you open the lid because the shadow kind of just stretches and then shrinks. Okay, thoughts are the version of the shadow of the original object of the higher dimensional jeweled diamond in hyperspace of the mind. So we can have thoughts forever and forever and forever, and it just continues to run around in circles, but you can actually stop the thinking and just know, and you'll get an infinite amount more information or knowledge at that point. Not information, but pure knowledge, without having to run the brain up and do all these things. You can overcome the brain, basically. And so when we do this while keeping the cycles of the breath, the mind, and eventually when we do that, the heart comes into check. We create an over harmony, like a symphony of vibrations where one's going, and then there's one within that, and then there's one within that. And the two create an over harmony and a vibration, and that flows. And once you do that, you're beginning to cultivate this etheric form around you, this energy, which is basically, it's a light body. And so maybe that's a good way to wrap up that. But again, this goes for years. You can learn about the methods, you can learn about what can be done and how to do it. But we ultimately generate this empowering form. It's called a light body, but it's not a light body. It's a liquid etheric energy. The light body is actually the brain, the holographic form. Light is polarized. It's dimensionally relative. It's like consciousness. Consciousness is dimensionally relative, and it is linear. It needs a linear timeline when nothing is actually flowing linear. Your consciousness can be fooled. They can press on and off, and in that amount of time, switch up a whole bunch of things using these technologies, and your consciousness won't know a thing. So the linearity behind that, and the light, the polarization behind that, it's not reliable for the truth. It'll get if you're an animal, you can use consciousness. It makes perfect sense because most of the time you're just pooping and eating and, you know, mating or something like that. What do you need to know? But if you're self-aware, the true nature of self-awareness and what the spirit is goes across many dimensions, and within the lower dimension, time can be all convoluted, switched up and backed up and turned around, and consciousness can't achieve awareness higher than this dimension. So we have to go into a state of knowing to get to that, and that has to do with withdrawing from the types of maybe the oppression, the confusion, and a lot of stuff like that. But I don't want to keep going on in that one. And really, it comes down to cleaning our body and our mind vibrationally, because there's pollutants everywhere. From what we see, the parasite. Somebody said something about spreading the parasite. I can't remember, but the parasite can be spread through media and through the eyes. They can put up a music video, a TV show with flashing symbols, whatever it is, and it can transmit the energy through visual media into the person. That's part of how it works. It's a code.
Okay, we've actually reached our time, but I want to just really briefly. If this whole thing, as you said earlier, just closes out, don't we all just go home?
Those who are entangled with this, not entangled with this realm, go home and they have their memory. Those who are entangled with this realm possibly could go home, possibly could remain entangled here until it acts like a leech, and it's like a knot pulled on both ends, and either the knot's going to break or the rope's going to break. And if they go, again, I can give you every possible reality, and from there you can pick up what you want. But the point is, I can't not, because watch, if they do go home, then what's going to happen if they don't have their memory? You know, you can get, let's say they do have their memory, okay, then they have their memory of a collapse and all that happening, and all this just becomes a dream, but they remember it. If they do go home, because we're all already there in the first place, but their identity of, oh, I had kids and this, that, and I had this job and this, that, and it all goes out the window because it's entangled in this realm, and still they're home, so it's better. But the idea is, wouldn't you want to know who you were? Because the point is, no one's going to give you a sheet and be like, I mean, technically they're supposed to.
Isn't that like saying, I've chosen to play, a virtual reality game, and I've created an avatar for it, and my avatar did all this stuff. Why do I need to be that attached to what my avatar did in the game? Why do I need to? Can't I just come out of it with the memory of, holy fuck, that was an interesting game?
You got to play both sides. You got to play both sides. One, if there was a wall that could say it deletes you and you go back source, would you literally be honest with yourself? You don't have to be honest with me, because I already know you'll be honest with yourself, because you can't lie to yourself. Your heart can't lie. Would you get up right now and walk through that wall knowing you're just going to erase everything that you ever were, but that you'll become the eternal being on the other side? Most people might say whatever they want, but they're not going to do it. Especially if you have kids or any type of restraint here, because the truth is, that's the other portions. If we're fine, if we have a magic pill that makes us go and we're gone, we're good. But what about everybody else? You can't break it up and give it to everyone else. So the best thing, here's what one of the things I was told, but we learned, we faced and confronted and developed. The best thing somebody who has the key out of here, the ticket out of here, can do is not leave. They want to share it with others and help others get out. Nobody wants to leave. The first person that leaves, you're like, oh, you asshole. Well, you figured it out and you just left. Not like, to you or anything, but it's like a joke. Bodhisattva. So the point is, so the idea is, if it's, again, so if you have no attachments, or if you do, that's your reference, your idea. That's the best way to get people to answer the questions, because I don't have to show them, but I'll ask you the question and now you know yourself. And the other is that if, you have to kind of make the decision here, if this realm is a holographic prison or just life as it is, one or the other, why are you here, and why are you in the first place? If you weren't supposed to be here, and if you are supposed to be left here, then why are you here now? And why are you here in the way and the shape and the feeling that you are, the emotions and the patterns? Is there not something to learn from that could basically make you a better spiritual being, or something that you have to complete? And as well, I'll play again, both sides of the field.
Hang on, but how does that play into? No, not necessarily, because what if everything I am right now is simply the result of being trapped into
let me
distorted hologram.
Let me keep going. So I'll play both sides of the field, because that's the best way. So if there's nothing here for you now, or if there is, or if there isn't, basically, that could be that none of that, forget that. But the idea is that there's a trap system. There's a explanation of a trap system that we are sophianic, eternal beings of liquid etheric soul energy, spiritual energy, actually drop down into the vibration of a soul and then stolen and drop down into the vibration of a body. And so the idea is that the trick is that we're told that we are to come here and learn about ourselves and experience pain and suffering because it's good for us. And suffering is good because everybody likes suffering, right? That makes sense. And so that it's an entire insanity system that you take somebody from an eternal universe of, you can have anything you want, and you put them into a system where it's just duality and mind control. It's basically like, playing like a crappy leaned arcade game that keeps kicking you in the chest every time you get to a certain point, and they tell you, but no, you like this game. You paid to come here. That's what you wanted, right? Isn't it? And so, but you have to decide on your own, because again, if that is true, then are you not bigger than all these problems that are here? Are you not stronger than all the mind control, than all the emotional limitations, than all the mental limitations, than all the things that hold you back? Are you not a cosmic, eternal, spiritual being that can make all that go away in a second? If you believe it, then do it. And I'm not saying you aren't, because the point is, everyone can do that. They just have to learn how. And the ironic thing is that it's true, at least in my mind, because the way you figure out how to do it is by letting go of all the things that we think we're supposed to entangle ourselves with and figure out, which is really weird. It basically is a type of trap system, but it's not a trap system, because if we want, we can go and get out of here instantly, which is the trap. It's weird. It's like a Chinese finger trap or an illusion that we're kind of, one of the 3D picture illusions, but it's like we're trapped in the illusion when all we have to do is drop the book. And it's like you weren't trapped, you were staring at a wall for like 5 hours, so it's really weird, but that's kind of how it is.
I absolutely completely agree with you on that one, that it's just, yes, we already are where we need to be. It's all right here, right now. It's all tangible, it's all within reach, and it's simply a matter of dropping the book. Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. We've run out of time, though. We've actually gone over time. I don't know whether you've enjoyed this or not. Yeah.
I'm neutral on everything, but I also enjoy everything. But I'm not gonna polarize.
Okay.
Sam, somebody even said, I want to say a few things before you close out.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. Somebody asked about Max Spears, which is crazy, but I just wanted to recommend a few people. Andy Perro was an earlier part of the projects. He and James Casbolt and Max Spears did probably more to unveil a lot of what's going on than anyone else is, for the most part, going to do. If what the groups that I've seen are telling the truth in history, because we're, a few years, if we're supposed to be months away from a mass disclosure event. So at that point, there's not going to be any more whistleblowers. It's all going to be, we're not whistleblowers. We're here to deliver the truth. But once disclosure comes about, no one's going to have a chance to go to one side, not go to one side. They're going to display some shit that's going to be so impactful, no one's going to be able to not polarize about it, which is the threat, which is the danger, which is why we're also coming out to kind of loosen people up, which can go both ways. People are going to be like, yeah, polarize, or people are going to be like, well, they said this and they're saying that, so I don't trust any of it, which is probably more beneficial, at least to develop your own way of referencing. Nobody believe what I'm saying just because. I would literally look at you like I would look at you if you developed your own. Look, don't believe it blindly. Don't reject it blindly. Develop your own schematic for reality and cross-reference. That's how you find knowledge. You cross-reference. That's all you can do. You have a version. They have a version. You see where you come in the middle. So Andy Perro, early Montauk situation, lots of all that stuff happens. That's what they do. There's multiple races. There's multiple temporal divergence devices. There's multiple groups. James Casbolt, same stuff. Multiple races, genetic engineering, temporal divergence devices. And I've seen all these people. I've been in operation with all these people. I do not mention or talk about somebody unless I sat there and basically interrogated them in another realm, which is not another realm. It's just in these cloning stations. And Max Spears, he has a deep background, and it's kind of hard to talk about with that, but he deserves the credit that he's getting. He deserves his respect. And so Preston Nichols, Duncan Cameron, they were early technicians and to some degree operatives. Duncan O'Finowin, he was an early operative. Seth Isboza with Black Earth Productions. He is basically a seer. He can comprehend what's going on just by being here. Shane the Ruiner, he was a operative early on. At one point, he trained me. I don't think he remembers it, though. Randy Moggins, Emily Moyer, Off Planet Radio, both operatives. Had to do with the temporal operations transitioning. Lily Earthling, she worked in a different department, dealt with some, look at her, what she talks about, does with some kind of weird stuff. Karen McDonald, not an operative, but she was given some healing technology that uses basically radio waves, and technically I don't know if that's the real thing, but that was part of what I was told was going to be the beginning of releasing this technology to heal people. They said, sure, we play both fields too. Well, whether they're doing it or not, there's people that are going to be releasing what is basically going to be virtual reality technology that you can plug into, which when a person who is not able to resist plugs in, it steals their soul. So be on the lookout for any virtual reality tech that people are starting, and this was years ago, 2010, and I've known about this stuff forever. We've used them in, the 80s, 90s, but and so, which is weird if you look into the background. But now they're starting to release the beginning of like mind-to-mind software and quantum computers, virtual reality, weird stuff. But it's because they built it 40, 50 years ago. So then Lance White, he has good information. George and Laura Leon, they're healers, as well as temporal operatives. Vaughn Palermo, healing, and she does a lot of radio work. And then Spencer Eskridge, he been through almost the stuff that I've been through, seeing them big mother effers, 14, 15 foot tall beings, 17, 18 foot tall beings for some of the other ones. Yeah, they got them. They're created beings. They're ancient beings. They created them, developed them. Somebody talked about, and Donald Marshall, look up, for instance, somebody said something about what if Project Blue Beam is just going to do this? Well, look at what he talks about, and with the mind link, the visual hallucinations, the Project Blue Beam technology can be made to look as real as reality, and that's the stuff that you have to be plugged into for, but they have ways of implementing that on 1,000 people to the point where you wouldn't even have to be there. There would just be an uprising in some city of a bunch of people that were chipped or whatever and saw an invasion or some crazy stuff, and nobody's going to be able to stop that, because if people friggin' say there's a free Twinkie on the road or something, a bunch of people will go risk getting hit by cars just because somebody whispered that in their ear. So imagine, there's an invasion.
Well, Pokemon Go gave us a glimpse of what that shit could look like.
Well, there you go. That was the AI. They were testing the AI. And so the AI is brilliantly pleased with the fallibility of people. That they can you can tell whatever. I mean, shoot, a made-up holographic, never mind, I'm not going to get into it.
Yes.
The Alien Love by Eve Lorcan, that's basically early stuff. And then somebody asked something about the cube device or the tube device, and they referenced sarcophagus technology. That is the sarcophagus technology. People are stored in those devices. That's how it works. None of this is theoretical. It's all applied application. The soul in the monad exists outside the realm. Consciousness is holographic. The heart is central when it's linked with the mind and the heart and linked to the body. Then we have an over-unification. We have one being out of the many. That is the whole point. Go from the components to where is the over being if we're the heart, mind, and body combined? There is no one place. It's an etheric production. It's an idea, an immaterial form. That's the soul. That's the spirit. That's what we produce. That's what we make sense of this through. We have to write our own script to get out of the Rubik's Cube matrix. I'm pretty much wrapping it up here. It's only like 20 seconds. There is an understanding, a mix-up about whether AI created us or whether we created AI. That'll take a whole show to talk about mandalas from the earth switching and the timelines and how body parts were modified. That's what they told me, because there are bleed-throughs which result from the switching and the timelines basically merging, trying to pop back and forth. It basically appears like radiation poisoning everywhere, which is why there are these radiation spills all over the place, which are basically to cover up the fact that the timeline is ripping apart. And so, and if we're not script writers, they have people plugged into these devices writing emotions, code, script as equations that enter into the devices and beam out over the population, and over the months and weeks' time, it plays out those events. They're literally writing the script of society using the operatives and these people. What's the point of time tech? Or what's the point of the game if they have time tech? Is because time isn't certain. there's probable realities. You can only have probable realities that are highly probable. You can't have certainties. I mean, you can, but it's not about the stuff that they have to do all these things in order to get done. Most people are unaware, so that's the whole point, to make people more aware, which yes, is going to freak people out, but that's the whole point. You can't get through that. That's a loss that we can't get to the better place without moving through. The main thing is quantum probabilities and quantum theories about causal theory, where they need an opening in consciousness where there is a slot. Emily Moyer talked about this in our first talk. There is a time slot where, because of decisions that were spawned by externally introduced parameters, there is now an opening in your temporal flow where they can stitch in the introduction of other beings or other parts of the environment or other parts of the storyline that would not be there unless you acted on certain inserted stimulus that are basically false synchronicity, that are injected into the timeline from these other beings, whether it's to do something that's out of personal, out of pattern for you, or to drop your emotions down, whatever it is. If you're always in control and everything that you do is based upon the fact that your inside source told you that's what you want to do, not told you, just know. I mean, there's no identity behind it. It's just a knowing. There's no way for another being that exists in hyperspace, in the temporal continuum, to interject into your reality. They can't actually touch you. They can't see you. They can't come up behind you. They can't do anything. They have to show you a pathway, and you pick that pathway and lead yourself to it. And now you're in a storyline version of your world that's degraded from the original path, and that's the one where they can play all these tricks and do all these things. It's quantum probability, quantum theory, and causal theory, where it's all based on causality. That if there's nothing that caused something for them to interject based upon you taking the cue, you taking the bait, then there's no way for them, for a non-physical being, to actually come into this timeline. And humanity has gone into, that's where we're in this whole degraded timeline version, because we've been doing that on a collective scale all over the planet, or the social system, civilization, or the plane, whatever you want to call it, for like 2,000 or 3,000 years now, and to the point where they're everywhere. It's like ants. Again, if we focus ourselves like a beam of concentrated bioetheric, neutral emotive capacity, like Reiki healing, pulsing it out through their hands, everybody's seeing that. You either believe it or you don't. When we do that, they can't feed off of that. It kills them. The truth is, it kills them to do that. If they're parasites, they must feed. If we produce energy that they can't feed on and they stay, they starve to death. They die. That's how it works. So they have to leave. But the point is, what's going to happen? How? Why? Is it a trick? Okay, what's going to happen when we're all clean? None here, because we beamed the area clean. You think everybody's going to do that at once? Probably not. So what's going to happen? There's going to be an area with 10 to the 22nd power of parasites now, because they all flow downstream to this side, and we're going to have to watch that, basically.
Where the ratio become unbalanced, too out of balance, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, unless you can come up with another way it makes sense, or some savior that's going to come in and beam that area, because we can't really kill them all. All we can do is get them out of our area where there are other people. We can't make everyone aware at once because everyone's plugged into the system. It's kind of like that book. You know, we got to put the book down, just let it go. But there's no one left to tell us to let it go. Everybody looked at it, and now we're all just standing in this room. Well, you have to look deep enough into the book so you remember that you're looking at a book. You get it? Or a hallucination, a virtual reality game. Or you have to read far enough into the book to realize and remember you're reading a book and get out of it, which is, it's paradoxical, it's counterintuitive, but that's how it has to work. And eventually, if we utilize the ins and outs of our consciousness and our awareness to continually produce more self-awareness instead of to feed our cycle of degradations, whatever experiences we are having are going to produce more and more self-awareness, and eventually just melts apart. And there's no way. That's what's happening. That's where the technology is failing. That's where everybody looks up and realizes it's all BS. It's just a control system they've been pulling over everyone's eyes for the past, 3,000 years, literally. And that's basically how it works. But there's going to be tricks. For instance, they tell me the war was won. It's all over. They lost. The parasite beings lost. They weren't there telling me that. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be here right now. But they were saying the humans won. A lot of people had to use this other technology. The war was lost by these beings, because how would they win anyway? If they won, then we all disappear. Then they have no food, and they lose too. They're not going to do that. That's the whole point. But in that, once we wake up, we can kick them out. and that we came back through time to re-experience it because there was like memories or soul groups that needed reorganization for whatever the next reality is supposed to be. Which again sounds kind of like a trick, but that's why I don't tell people these things until I go through 2 hours of like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? But they told us that the war was won on the human side, lost on the parasite side, and that all we're doing now is trying to wake up the population. And what it means with these the lost and how these parasites here, they said the sources, the devices that power these parasites are turned off and they're not powered by external devices anymore. Human etheric bioemissions is the only thing that's powering the devices. So once people wake up and stop doing it, they just fall apart. It's like the vampire head has been taken out. Head got cut off, heart got stabbed. So the only thing is these minions, these nanite devices are being powered by bioetheric bioemissions from people who are basically feeding into that delusional cycle.
You know what you just said in the last few minutes there, I agree with completely. You've used completely different words, perhaps, and painted it a little differently. But yes, I agree. And there is this feeling right now that we're simply playing things out in what I refer to as TikTok time. And we're kind of just going through the motions in a way, because it has already played out. And the technology is failing, has failed. And there is nowhere outside of this construct for them to go. They don't exist outside this construct.
Precisely.
Okay, thank you. That was awesome.
Yeah, I think that was kind of, I picked out questions that were like easily used to outline what I'm trying to get across, and that's where like a lot of structure is found. Talking about it is good, but we're people, so the shit is weird, so we kind of just go off and it becomes like a sci-fi movie. It becomes really weird. That's what it is. So yeah, thank you though.
Thank you. Maybe we'll do it again if you're up for it.
Yeah, a little bit more structure. I mean, honestly, I think some of these, maybe I'll save some of these questions, or maybe on that break I'll try and go through to get more questions next time, because the questions, if we go from there, it'll have a more structured manner. And look at the interviews, discussions, and some of those talks, discussions that I've done, because this is the most amped up version, but I think it's because of your background with the Lilu thing, because no one knows what to think about that. No one knows how to take that or what it means, because it's entirely possible. It's one of the easiest things to do. Hack into the system, and then there's ultimate or multiple beings. It's not sci-fi or anything weird to me. It's like right around the corner from what's happening. But it's just weird because it's like I feel that type of energy around where a lot of people are looking at this like, what's going to happen next? But check out the other videos. Check out the blog. And yeah, I'm putting together some stuff right now that should help with the advanced technology. So I was assigned to talk about the advanced technology, but it's kind of weird because it's only part of what I did talk about. But that's what I basically know the best about how the technology works, how it's been used, and the results of what's happened, as well as the celebrity cloning. And we didn't talk about the unveiling at all, but we kind of did because this whole thing is wrapped up in it. But there's 3 phases of the unveiling. Go to the blog, look at one of the top links. There's other unveiling sites, and then there's 3 phases of the unveiling, or the unveiling of the hidden knowledge. There's 3 phases. One is celebrity cloning, or the corruption. It's basically the corruption being exposed. That started end of the last year. People started realizing they're doing what in that, and these guys are doing this and dressing up like that and doing that. That doesn't make any sense. Oh yeah, it's just art. It's all just art. That's what we do that for. Okay, if you have 3.5 brain cells max, you can see what's going on. So that's coming out, and then the second is the advanced technology and what they've been doing with that, time, all that stuff, consciousness transfer, immortality devices, and then the third is how that has impacted our timeline and our universe, which is basically the timeline shifting, the multiple realms, the multiple dimensions, the multiple races of beings, and cosmic intelligence and artificial intelligence. And they said all that's supposed to be disclosed before this is finished, that there will be public acknowledgement of all these issues, but they also said there's going to be a lot more stuff because there's like earth changes at the end of that and some civil unrest and a lot of weird stuff, but nothing we didn't really not talk about and predict in a way. And again, we are the imaginative, or more so, we're the creative forces. We're connected to the ultimate creative force, therefore we're the creative beings. So whatever we think about is going to end up happening more and more. So if we put ourselves in whatever situation that we're in the power position, the position of power, then that will basically, it will tend to play itself out in our favor. Which is hard to do, but it's as simple as an idea, a perspective.
Okay. Well, I have to wrap this up. I need to go and eat. I haven't eaten a thing yet, and I'm starting to pass out.
We don't want that.
We don't want that. So I want to thank you, and I thank, what do we end up with? Over 80 people in the chat room. I will let you know as soon as this is made public, and I look forward to a follow-up.
Yeah, a little bit more structure, and just geared towards what the people want, because what the people want will make the truth, it'll force the truth to come out, because you can't please anyone or everyone, so it'll like hit all the angles. Yep. All right, thank you then. I enjoyed it.
Bye for now.
Yep.